So as I mentioned yesterday, and obviously we found out with the patch notes today, there is an extra 50 health added, which dramatically changes the TTK. And it doesn't only change the theoretical TTK, which we're talking about today. It's going to change the practical TTK, because if an extra 1 or 2 shots to kill, we are not 100% accurate. Even if you're like 40% accurate, that means it's going to be an extra 3 shots for every shot. So now you're dramatically increasing that realistic practical TTK. So it's going to feel much, much better. Obviously, there's still going to be instances where you get multiple headshots and you can delete. But for the most time, the extra 50 health will make it so that if you get shot, you still have a chance to reset the fight, reposition, and potentially win that fight if you were caught off guard. But because of this, you can see kind of how this lays out. We have extra health. So the shots to kill is jumped up. The top left, you can see the health is 300. And that includes 150 health plus 150 armor. And I've accounted for the armor TTK because there are different numbers there. For the most part, they're not going to impact every scenario. They have very niche scenarios where they're helping out to either speed up the TTK or to slow it down if it's a little bit too broken. I've gone through and done that. We also have the average damage per mag based off the practical damage range, right? So these are all long range weapons. So we're going to focus on the long range damage per mag. When we get to the close range, we'll have a close range damage per mag because that makes the most sense. And then we have probable TTKs, which is kind of like bringing together the TTKs based off the individual number of what you're likely to get. Could be slightly faster, could be slightly slower, but that's kind of a realistic comparison, right? And I did this for all kinds of weapons, that ones that I don't even think necessarily are meta, but just to give you kind of options to work with, because there will be some slight weapon balancing, which typically doesn't do as much as you would like. So this could give you a good basis. Since I am out of town until the 19th, I won't be able to update anything. I just wanted to give you guys a good start for that. So we can see here, the RAL MG has always had the fastest TTK pretty much, still does. HCR kind of comes out, which I think is going to be probably like a sneakily good front runner. Because it has less recoil than the Cronin. So there you go. It is an LMG though, so it is a little bit slower. And we'll give you some builds for what I think are some of the meta options. And then you can kind of work with what makes the most sense for you. Cronin Squall is still pretty good. You can see how these damage per mag lays out. If they're green, that's typically good. And then if they're red, then that's typically something you'll save for solos or duos or something like that, because you are going to be limited, especially after the extra shots to kill. Cronin typically does have a little bit more recoil. So even though this is 828, you're more than likely going to have a higher TTK because the practical shots to kill will be higher. So if the shots you missed will raise that TTK, and there you go. Rap H could be another good option. You can still rock the Cronin in semi-auto. It does have a little bit slower TTK, but the damage per mag is nuts. Socken is pretty cool. Icarus, you got a few different options there. Attack V, RPK. You can see this kind of leaned a lot towards LMGs. And then M4 is probably good like sniper support mid-range, but you can kind of see where the drop-off is. They still have some decent TTKs, but in a practical sense, trying to down someone and thirst them, you're likely to get caught reloading, which when you get caught reloading, you likely die. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is the close range TTKs. And I've already taken the time to go ahead and sort those out, and you kind of see how they lay out. The unfortunate part is it didn't open up the meta quite as much. On the long range, it looks like we're going to have a good variety, and obviously people narrow down to a certain ones, but it seems like the variety of options will be pretty plentiful. Like you could probably do a random lobby and you'll have 5 people rocking, they'll be rocking 5 different of those guns, versus the close range is super limited. I think it's going to be 1 or 2 weapons, and that's kind of where you funnel towards. Still the Lockman sub, as you can see, the damage per mag and the TTK puts it as one of the ultimate options, especially with the way they've modified and balanced certain weapons. With the mobility penalties, kind of removing some of those, that will allow this to even shine even more. Chimera is that rifle category, so it kind of throws this off. You got to share ammo with your rifle, which isn't always good. This one is a little bit wonky, but I know people love this for sniper support. It'll still be great for that. Fennec kills pretty good, as it always has, but the damage per mag is going to be even bigger issue. You're going to have to build your class around that. Maybe good for solos, but beyond that, it's going to be tricky for people that aren't the absolute most skilled to kind of balance it out. Vaznev's still good, and you can see it's still really close there. I think that's a good second option. It has a little bit less recoil at range, a little bit better range, a little bit better mobility than maybe the Lockman sub, but the damage per mag is a little bit lower. So you may prefer to have that if you're in maybe duos, trios with this change. And then the 7.4U, it's a little bit slower, And you can see the drop off is pretty heavy there. And a lot of times the practical TTKs are a lot closer to the theoretical TTKs when it comes to close range meta, because when a target's that close, you're less likely to miss shots versus somebody at 50, 80, 100 meters. As the distance increases, you are likely to miss more shots. So the practical TTK becomes much longer. That's why these ones are more accurate representation of what the TTK is that you will feel in game. And sometimes even faster if enough headshots are in the mix. So you can kind of see how that lays out. I think this is a little bit more narrowed. I hope there's significant weapon balancing. Like I said, I won't know until I get back to be able to do a little bit more tuning, testing, and balancing. But unless the new weapons come out the gate super good, I think the Lockman sub is still here to stay. All right, so with that being said, we have a few different weapons. We'll go ahead and take a look at a few long range options, and we kind of have 2 close range options. I don't really want to go beyond that because I think unless we see some significant balance changes, I think most people are still going to kind of stick with the same 2. So I thought I'd give you some loadouts for that. So for the new season, so the first one is the Cronin, which I think has been kind of the standard build that we've kind of gone with even since it first came out in January. Although we'll take a little bit longer to kill. I don't necessarily know if this will be the number 1 option because, like I said, the HCR probably comes out a little bit because it is just easier to use, and this is already slow, so it kind of balances out with that. Those are kind of the attachments, how that will build out. It's pretty straightforward. And then we also have the Lockman sub, which I think this is going to be kind of a standard build. Everyone does a little bit different. Some people don't like the underbarrel. Some people want a muzzle instead. There are little differences. This is kind of just a standard build that I think feels good. That I showed, that I've used for quite a while for multiple seasons. Well, so like I said, I have the HCR with the Vaznev, and I think both of these are pretty good options. Obviously, the Lockman kind of edges out the Vaznev. This is kind of a build that we would go with here. Pretty straightforward. We do get high velocity, which is really nice because then your bullets feel like they're actually registering a little bit. Since this thing doesn't have a ton of recoil, you have all the attachments there. You don't need an extended mag because 60 is plenty. So you kind of get a free attachment to put into velocity. And that's what also makes the HCR a pretty solid option. Vaznev, still pretty similar build that we've had for a while. Like we said, TTK is still pretty solid even after this change. You will have to be accurate. If you miss too many shots, obviously the damage per mag could bleed through pretty quickly. But that's kind of the standard build I've had for quite a while. Then it gets us into the Icarus, which is also an LMG, long range, all that good stuff. Same kind of build. We don't have to put an extended mag because we get 75 right away. You could put on a stock if you wanted to go that route, maybe do something related to that. You could put on a laser to go ahead and kind of speed it up a little bit. That's kind of the route I would go though. So you kind of got that, and it kind of works in that niche. Vaznev's still the exact same. And that brings us to the TAC V, which has been pretty good. I think this was more of an outlier. I just wanted to, kind of incorporate another long range option. I'm sure there's going to be other ones that kind of people say, oh, what about this one? Go ahead and use that one. I'm not stopping anyone from using anything. You saw the list. You can make a decision on that list by yourself. That doesn't include any recoil and variations in the way you would want to play a specific style. We're not including sniper support. We're strictly focusing on long range meta, close range meta options. And these are kind of where I would start and kind of go from there. The unfortunate part with the barrel is why we don't run one of those is it's not really helping with recoil while helping with bullet velocity. So we just go with the high velocity. That gives us the added bullet velocity we like without really any downsides to that other than damage range, which really isn't all that important because everything you're going to challenge is beyond the furthest damage range to begin with. So pretty straightforward. I think there probably are some other options like the 7.62. It could be really good probably in solos, but this is just more all around builds to get you started. Unfortunately, it does look like we're getting into more of an LMG style slower meta since there aren't any really rifles in the mix when it comes to this. We got some battle rifles. So appreciate your support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.